Good day, dear learners. I'm Mrs. K, and today we are going to discuss how to be successful in answering the transactional text section of any of your assessments or exams, for example, in paper 3, section B. Now, there are numerous transactionals that we will go through in the upcoming videos, but in the next video, I'm going to look specifically at grade 10 text, which we learn about, and that is our transactional writing the newspaper article. News articles are formal, objective pieces of writing that informs the reader about the current events happening either in the world or the area around them. And you'll see very often when this question is asked, the topic leans towards things that have happened around you so that it's easier for you to answer this specific writing piece. Now, how do we become objective? Very important. You have to remove all the emotions from your writing to ensure that it is not your opinion that is shown here. Now, there are many ways to do this. For example, you can't make accusations. You can't say someone is bad or a crook or a horrible human being. You must remain neutral in your terminology. Because remember, normally a newspaper will be printed or viewed online, and if the information is not 100% accurate, the company can be sued. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean. You can say, the accused robber fled the scene on foot. Now, this concept applies to both positive and negative descriptors. For example, did you hear I said the accused robber? I didn't say the horrible robber or named him anything else than what he was or she. And just on a side note, remember that in magazine writing, because that's another type of article that you will have to be able to write, it is completely different. There we want your opinion, we want your experience, and we want to have your point of view written into a magazine article. But definitely not here, because as a journalist, you would have done some research, and this teaches you to write factual. Alright, so remember in this article, don't take sides. Pretend like you've chatted to experts or people on the scene that would have enabled you to get the information that you need to write an accurate, factual document. Also, remember that this forms part of the evidence. And ladies and gents, you need to write the evidence into a newspaper article. Without it, it just becomes hearsay. And then the last thing I want to mention about writing objectively is that you cannot use personal pronouns. You can't say, I felt, we agreed. You need to be out of this piece. That doesn't apply for when you are writing in a quote from an expert. Say, for example, Dr. Bredenkamp made an analysis on the scene, and he says, in my opinion, blah, blah, blah. Now, that personal pronoun remains there because it is a direct quote from the person whose evidence or experience you are writing into your newspaper article. Remember, you have to add these quotes of the interviews you would have had as a professional. Remember, pretend. Now, part of the process is to plan. Dear learner, you have to plan before you do your final writing piece. Now, it's very important that you remember the purpose as well as the audience of the text, because that will determine how you design your layout and choose your different types of words, your diction, and that will cause you to score high marks. Now remember, for transactionals, we specifically look at the format, the style, and which point of view you are writing from or to. And I'm going to stress here that the format is exceptionally important when it comes to transactionals. Even if your content is horrible, you had a bad day, someone shouted at you and you just had a blank moment and you weren't very creative, you can still score on the layout of your piece, because that is almost 1/3 of the mark that you can get. Now remember, you have to brainstorm. You have to use something like a mind map or a spider diagram, whatever suits your style. And it has to be detailed enough for us to afford you marks there. Also remember that when you're done with your planning and you're looking at the final piece again, double check the word choices. Have you written in full sentences? Are all your paragraphs structured according to what a newspaper article will be? Now we're going to talk about that in some of a later slide. So remember this part of how we structure our paragraphs. Now, what do I want to see in a newspaper article? Well, firstly, you need to state the facts. They need to be succinct and they need to be accurate, right? Even if it's just pretending, we can still sound as if you were the journalist at the scene getting the information. Remember, you need to grab your reader's attention, and I'll show you how to do this in the next few slides. We are going to summarize the information accurately using factual words. Remember, you always need a title for a newspaper article. Most people read the newspaper article and then decide, am I going to read it? Am I not going to read it? Now, if you're excellent at creating headlines, then you are going to grab your reader's attention, and this of course scores high in your content part of your mark. Right, then lastly, in the introductory paragraph, which we will discuss next, you're going to answer the following questions, and then some of it is going to be answered in the remainder part of our newspaper article. You're going to answer in this writing piece: who did it happen to, who was involved, what had happened, give me the incident or incidents, how did it happen? And that will be the detailed part of your answer. When did it happen? It needs to be either a day or a date, or it needs to be a time, or all three. Where did it happen? And this you immediately write in your first paragraph. And why did it happen? That will become transparent throughout the writing piece if you have that information. And then, of course, to what degree? Now, how do I structure my newspaper article? Well, it's quite simple. Now, on the screen, you will notice that we have the headline, the subheading, the byline, the lead paragraph, the entire body, and then the conclusion. You will write your newspaper article in exactly that format. You can leave out the subheading, as it is not always important unless you really have to explain something. Remember, and we're going to start with the headline now specifically, that you want to really engage your reader. A lot of people don't read newspapers anymore, so if it is an excellent headline, if it grabs your attention within the first lead paragraph, you are winning, my friend. Now let's talk about the headline. The headline is the first thing that a reader will see when they take the newspaper and open it up, and it is very important that you ensure that it is catchy, it grabs the reader's attention. Now, how do we do this? Well, you use figures of speech, like, for example, alliteration. You can use puns, you can use ambiguity, personification, paradoxes. The sky is the limit. Not only will it help you to more or less summarize what the article will be about, but as I've said before, it will hook your reader. And here are good examples. Cows lose their jobs as milk prices drop. Right, the ambiguity there implying that these cows have actual jobs. Right, scientists to kill ducks to see why they're dying. Seems a bit of a paradox there, which intrigues our reader. Right, let's go to the next part. Now, as I've mentioned before, you would have noticed that I haven't actually talked about a subheading. A subheading is only necessary when we want to add additional information, possibly to explain even further what we meant in our headline. But most of you stick to a headline, and below that you will write a byline. Now, a byline tells us who the article was written by. And normally this would be the word by, don't forget to write that, as well as the name. You can have a pseudonym, for example, but mostly it is the actual journalist's name. For example, you'll notice here, COVID cuts current currency. A little bit of alliteration going on there. And the subheading would be travel laws restrict tourists from entering South Africa. The byline is the part in orange that says by Elise Butler. Right, now we get to the lead paragraph. The lead paragraph is the first paragraph below your heading and your byline. You are going to summarize the entire article in this paragraph. It is not a lot of words, but it does have a specific way of being written. So what do I need here? You need to tell me where the incident took place. It will be a city or a town. So you'll start with Johannesburg. Right. Then, when did it happen? We normally use the word yesterday because otherwise news is not new, and of course they're not newsworthy. So it'll sound like this. Johannesburg, full stop, new heading, not heading, capital letter, and you'll say yesterday, comma. Right, then briefly summarize what happened. So it should sound something like that. This, Johannesburg, yesterday, the Minister of Health declared that South Africans are being kept from entering different countries due to the strict COVID regulations. Right. I've in that summary also put my who by mentioning, for example, the Minister of Health. Okay. And that is all you write. That is the entire lead paragraph. From there, you're going to start staggering your paragraphs from the most important information, which was just in your lead, and then it goes down to the least important information. Like, you can contact so-and-so for more information or visit this website. Those are all not so important information. All right, so we're going to have a look at that just now. Now, when we are past the lead paragraph, my apologies, then we're going to start looking at what is the most important information. Give us some background information in paragraph number 2. Then include who were interviewed in the process, perhaps dignitaries from other countries. If we continue with our example from the lead paragraph, talk about doctors and experts in the field, and of course you make all of this up. You make up their names, you make up their credentials, because it is, after all, called creative writing. We are making all of this up and living in a pretend world. Right, then more information. Here you want to really talk about how could this possibly affect us in the future, for example. Right, and then if you have another paragraph, depending on how many words you've used, remember you only have 180 to 200 words, you will have a concluding paragraph. Now in your concluding paragraph, you're going to briefly summarize your article and you're going to give us some final thoughts there. But please do not reuse the things that you have already used, because that borders on being boring, and of course that affects your content mark. Right, now here is an example of what a lead and a paragraph after that would look like. So follow full victim to vendetta. Your byline by Rosie Moses. Once again, in our lead paragraph, you see it's very short, but it's going to tell you exactly what happened in this particular incident. First, the place, Johannesburg, then yesterday. Now we have the who, and then I'll tell you the where. 4 armed men held the Minister of Health and his family hostage in their Belleville home for 4 hours. Now, you'll notice I've said 4 armed men. I didn't say any crude or rude words to describe these men. Now, leading from that, we want to either have our comment or we want our background, right? So here's an example. Dr. Joe Fowler and his family were held at gunpoint in their home by 4 armed men. The family was successfully rescued after a specialized SWAT team apprehended the 4 armed men during a tactical raid, commented Sergeant Joe Black of the Belleville Police Unit. The alleged attackers demanded money in release of the Fowler household. Now, just a few comments and things that I'd like to just mention. When we talk about someone for the first time, it is ideal to mention their entire name, as you see here. I've also done the same here with Sergeant Joe Black. It seems I need some exercise with how to draw accurately. Moving on from there. When you write their name for the second time, you are only going to use their surname. No initials, no first name. So say, for example, I talk about Sergeant Joe Black in the following paragraph, then I'm going to say, Black confirmed that the Fowler family are shocked but in good health, for example. Right, because sometimes you want to follow up with how are the people doing and are they okay? Right, so I hope that helps a little bit to kind of gear you for writing your own piece. Remember to go practice this at home. You want to practice the lead example and you want to practice preferably writing the second and third paragraph after your lead. I'm just going to finalize this, just remind you. Remember that when we're talking about incidents, whether it's an accident, robbery, it's normally your headline sort of articles, then, dear learner, you are going to have to remember that these people are innocent until proven guilty. And you need to change your choice of words as to not have a negative connotation. Right, my darlings, that wraps up our newspaper article theory lesson. Remember to check out the how-to videos which will be posted later this month. In our next video, we are going to look at how to write a blog post successfully. This is Miss K, and I will see you soon, sweethearts. Cheerio.